We are not going to win this competition, are we? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. I'm your host, Matt, and I hope you guys are having a lovely day. Right, so the Club World Cup is in full swing and things are happening. Chelsea came off the back of their first game against LAFC with a 2-0 win. Cool, right? Okay, yeah, we did a thing. We beat an MLS team. We made it maybe look a little bit more difficult than it could have been, but we got it over the line and we scored some goals, and there was some really positive points to have a look at in that game, right? If you are interested in my full breakdown of the match, please check out my patch notes video on my channel, where I go into detail about kind of what happened, what my prediction was versus the lineup, you know, yada yada, the full match review thing. So although the Club World Cup is on, the transfer window actually reopened on exactly the same day, and we're going to get into a little bit of transfer noise today. Wingers, right? It's wingers. If the Club World Cup has made anything really evident for Chelsea, it is that we are desperate for a left winger, and two names seem to be circulating the rounds in general. Obviously, the heavily aforementioned Jamie Gittins is still the guy, it seems. Do you know what I mean? He's actually come out, well, supposedly he's come out, if the news is to be believed, saying he only wants Chelsea. He seems like a good fit. I would surmise he's probably better than Jadon Sancho was. Like, I think we'd get more out of him than we got out of Jadon Sancho last year. He's young, he fits the blue coat, let's get all the kids in kind of thing. He'll sign a really long deal. He won't be paid an exorbitant amount of money. And although he didn't have an unbelievable season last year, the season before, and, you know, there's a lot there to say that if we get this guy, then he could easily turn out to be a really good player. So yeah, I'm for Jamie Gittins. I have been kind of since it come out. You know, the other options that have kind of faded into obscurity are the likes of Nico Williams, for instance, who wanted a lot of money, but also wasn't very keen to leave Spain. I'd rather focus on someone that wants to come to the club for less money rather than, you know, someone like a Nico Williams, who is a very flashy, dopamine, you know, inducing signing, but ultimately it's probably just not the right fit, is it? As far as other names we've been linked with, there is young Malik Fofana, a left winger playing in Lyon, in Ligue 1 last season, and he actually quietly looks really, really good. He scored 5 goals and got 4 assists in Ligue 1, and also 6 goals and 1 assist in the Europa League. So, you know, we can have the chat about, you know, France is the Farmers League or whatever, but the Europa League is a bigger stage than we played on last year in terms of Europe, and he smashed it in that. So albeit quite a new and tentative link at the moment, it's just another one to say that we're in for that kind of left winger, right? There are other clubs linked with him as well, and I'm not actually sure if we'll get any signings over the line whilst the Club World Cup is going, but it is still positive to see us being linked with these kind of players, and they all fit the same profile, don't they? They literally all are, you know, younger or in and around 20 years old. They're scoring kind of 5 goals in the season, and they're all right-footed as well, isn't it? Because, you know, in my match preview for the LAFC game, I was like, Madueke looked amazing in an England shirt. Let's get him on the left wing and see if he can lock it down. And although he had a couple of bright moments, it's just not his position, is it? And, you know, tactically the balance does feel a little bit off. It's all fine and good saying, oh, you know, he can put crosses in and, you know, he can do this kind of thing. But if that's not the way that Maresca ideally wants to play, then the balance will be off, because we're putting a square peg in a round hole. So not a huge amount of other transfer news going on at the moment. Bashir Humphreys, a young Chelsea Academy product, has been officially sold to Burnley for 10 mil. So he will be playing in the Premier League with them next season. He didn't ever really look like he was going to get close to the first team. That's 10 mil in the bank for an academy product, and that is just the general currency these days, isn't it? 10 mil for an academy product is 10 mil pure book profit for all of us Chelsea finance experts who have to have degrees in finance to follow our club. Not a particularly sad one, kind of, you know, not too bothered about it. Hope he does well, and yeah, that's the end of that one, I guess. And as far as potential outgoings, there is some slightly unrestful news coming out of the works, right? Obviously, the news about Enzo Fernandez being linked with Real Madrid, that's not new, but it refuses to go away. Real Madrid are still hanging around. Chelsea are supposedly remaining firm, and, you know, I think that's fair. Although, you know, I think Andre Santos could come in and do a real job. I don't think, with how important Enzo became last year, I think selling him right now would be a foolish move. Apparently money could sway, right? That's kind of what the news is saying, that money could sway, and you've got to think, well, I mean, we bought the guy for like 105, 110 mil, something like that. It's going to have to be 150, like, to even consider it. And what do you do with 150 mil? Like, what other midfielder do you bring in to replace the literally the numbers as well. Like, it's not even just a play thing at this point. Like, Enzo Fernandez is literally our top assister of the last season, and he is popping up with important goals just like he did in the Club World Cup the other day. I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. Enzo Fernandez, like my kind of view on Enzo Fernandez, I mentioned it a few times. He isn't looking like he's knitting the play together, and he's not looking like he's a really important part of how the team plays. But you can't argue with the guy's numbers. Like, he's obviously doing something right. And if this Lampard style arrive in the box and score a goal at the last minute is something that he's developing and working on, having the likes of Liam Delap in the team, for instance, might make that happen more often, then it'd be crazy to get rid of him, wouldn't it? Absolutely crazy. I can only hope that Chelsea stay firm. Obviously, if you get 150 mil waved under your nose for anyone, you're always going to consider selling, right? Even the likes of Cole Palmer, as much as he seems to be the cornerstone of our team for the, obviously on his day, if someone came in and was like, here's 180 million or 200 mil for Cole Palmer, they're obviously going to consider it. But it's just really difficult to replace these kind of people, isn't it? And Enzo Fernandez has gone a long way to winning over the fans. Do you know what I mean? He didn't have an amazing first season. There was his questionable behaviour with the Argentina team after they beat France in the World Cup. But after all of that, do you know what I mean? Is like he stood strong, and he's come back and he's worked his way into the team, and he's just kind of slowly turning into a cult hero. So I would say let's keep Enzo Fernandez, but money talks at the end of the day. I would just be worried about replacing him. And in other slightly unrestful news, Nicolas Jackson, right? So Maresca, in particular, is an enormous fan of Nicolas Jackson, and the noise coming from the player camp is Jackson stays because he offers so much to the team, and Maresca really, really likes the way he plays, and you can kind of see that, right? Because Jackson is he's an all-rounder. The thing that Jackson is missing is consistency and getting it in the back of the net. He looks amazing sometimes, but he's obviously quite well known for missing big chances, right? But ultimately, that is something that can be coached out of him. Do you know what I mean? If that can be coached out of him, you're looking at a really, really, really important player there. There were links a couple of weeks ago with Man United. I never really thought that one would happen. But more recently, Aston Villa. Obviously, Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins is, he's probably going to start to slow down, and he's never really consistently arrived to the point where he's been that danger man, has he? And obviously he didn't really play for a lot of the back end of last season either. And Nicolas Jackson, I guess you could see why someone like Unai Emery would like Nicolas Jackson in his team. I think if someone came in with 60 or 70 mil for Nicolas Jackson, I think Blueco would take it. Do you know what I mean? And this is one of the difficult things about having a club that is, it's the new thing, isn't it? Coaches coach the team, and now your technical directors and your CFOs and these guys, they control the transfers and the ins and outs of the team. I don't see selling Nicolas Jackson as a good idea, and I guess largely for me that's because I'm not really convinced by any of the other options on the market at the moment. Benjamin Sesko, he looks all right, but he looks pretty nailed on for Arsenal if that's going to happen. Hugo Ekitike is a Jackson sort, I guess, but it's just so much money, man. 100 mil for a Hugo Ekitike just seems like a real... even someone like Victor Osimhen, although I'm not a huge fan of the idea of him coming into the team, I feel better about Victor Osimhen coming in and getting goals in the back of the net and being that kind of, focal point for the team than I do Hugo Ekitike, who supposedly is another Jackson type player. So are we going to sell Jackson for 70 mil and then replace him with the same type of player for 30 mil more and get the same output? Liam Delap needs obviously much more of a chance to prove that he can be the guy. I think his first outing, although no goals, he looks promising so far, but replacing Nicolas Jackson just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. I guess one of the other things as well, isn't it, is we're all kind of on this Nicolas Jackson can play left wing, and I'm one of these guys. I'd actually love to see Nicolas Jackson be given a bit more of a shot out there, especially with our left wing situation being what it is. But money talks to these new owners, man. Do you know what I mean? The American guys, it's all about book balancing. 60 mil on the books now, 60, 70 mil on the books now is huge, and them going out for big targets, right? So Enzo Fernandez and Nicolas Jackson are being talked about. That's really all it is at the moment as well. Do you know what I mean? Nothing concrete, but also this isn't the first time. These rumours do keep on kind of circulating and stuff, so it's not necessarily just a flash in the pan and this week's news is just this thing. There are a few times that both players have been linked away, and I guess it's hard, isn't it? Because you want to see players grow into your team and you want to start being like, oh, I like this guy. He's been around for a while. I've watched him develop. I've watched him go from, underwhelming to superstar. That's kind of what you want from your team in general to help you feel more connected to it. And Nicolas Jackson and Enzo Fernandez were both part of the new era when the Blueco guys took over. So tough one. I would, for at least the next season, right? At least the next season, I will keep both of them. I think the other thing with Jackson in particular is he's never really had a chance to battle someone for that spot, right? Ever since we've had Nicolas Jackson, he's been the guy. Do you know what I mean? He's just been the only real striker option that we've got. And, barring injury, he's probably always been the first name on the team sheet. And you got to look what happened when we lost Jackson through injury. We weren't, obviously, Mark Gui got injured at the same time. So he wasn't exactly able to come in and deputise, but we didn't go into our academy and look for other strikers. We put Tyreek George and Pedro Neto there. We're putting wingers there. And that obviously tells you how much Enzo Maresca favours those other things that Nicolas Jackson can do. Do you know what I mean? So, I don't know. A little bit of a ramble about this one maybe, but I think just as the team is starting to glue together and you finally provided some competition for Jackson in a Liam Delap, one or two things could happen there, right? Liam Delap ends up coming in and being the guy and Nicolas Jackson falls to the wayside and we sell him eventually. Fair enough, because that's a sample size that you can look at. The other option there is Liam Delap comes in and Nicolas Jackson gets this new fire under him because he hasn't really ever had any competition yet in a Chelsea shirt. So maybe Liam Delap is exactly what Nicolas Jackson needs to push himself over that level to find that focus and stop missing those chances. But yeah, only time will tell. And like I say, none of these big moves are going to come before the end of the Club World Cup, right? That would be silly. We're not going to be starting, Jackson up top and Enzo Fernandez in midfield. And then halfway through the competition, it's like, oh, actually, they've been sold. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, that's going to be a real problem for them. And they probably wouldn't even want to play at that point because they were like, don't want to risk getting injured for my new club. So although it's hyperbole and whatever at the moment, ultimately none of these moves are going to happen before the end of the Club World Cup. And speaking of the Club World Cup, please keep it locked. In a few days I will be releasing my next episode of Early Access, where I look at, it's basically match previews, right? And the next game on the 20th of June is against Brazilian side Flamengo. They won their game against Esperance of Tunisia 2-0. So we're looking at a 2-0 against a 2-0 at the moment. You would think obviously in the rankings we're much higher than Flamengo, but you never know. I've said it before. These kind of competitions can be a real galvanizer for squads, right? Because it's an event. There's something to play for. There's a big stage. Not necessarily full stadiums, but there's a lot of people watching. So keep it locked for the next episode of Early Access. As far as other young Chelsea prospects doing very well, there is an interesting story about Geovany Quenda. So obviously we've just signed Dario Asugo from Portugal, from Sporting Lisbon. He's in the Club World Cup squad. And he's centre of a defensive midfielder, 20 years old. At the same time we signed him, we signed a young 17-year-old winger called Geovany Quenda. And there are myriad comparisons flying around at the moment between him and our other young South American sensation, Esteval Willian. They are both young, tricky right wingers with a wand of a left foot. Yes, Geovany Quenda has just come off of the back of a man-of-the-match performance in the under-21 Euros with a goal and an assist at a tender 18 years old. This guy's looking really good, man. It's another headache waiting to happen because it's another left-footed, tricky right winger, which we are very well stocked with at the moment. And you've got to think this is only a further nail in the coffin for someone like Noni Madueke, who is, obviously not really looking like he's close to getting any game time on the right at the moment. We don't need 3 right wingers with left foots on the team. Quenda is on loan at Sporting for the next season, so we're not going to see him, do you know what I mean, this season, but I imagine after his performances in the under-21 Euros, people are going to be starting to keep higher tabs on him, right? We're going to probably be a bit more interested, as we were with Esteval Willian in his Brazil league last year, because obviously we signed him, almost exactly the same sort of thing. We signed him a year ago, sent him back on loan to his club, and he will be joining up with us at the end of this season. Also, with it, maybe we've got a little bit of egg on our face. Thiago Silva, right? Thiago Silva is now 40 years old and has just captained Fluminense to a clean sheet against Borussia Dortmund. Man, he just keeps going, doesn't he? He just keeps going. We bought him at 36 years old from PSG, and PSG wouldn't give him another contract because they were like, "You're done, mate. You're done." So we were like, "We'll have him," and he turned out to be one of the best defenders we've had in the last 10 years. And he is still doing it. I know Fluminense is obviously, a very different prospect. He's not playing really high tempo football all the time, but to come in at 40 years old and get a clean sheet against Borussia Dortmund is incredible. Also, it was quite interesting, I found, in his interview afterward. He did it in fluent English, and that seems mad, but he didn't speak a lick, not a single word of English when he came to Chelsea initially. So from the age of 36 to the age of 40, he has learned to speak English fluently, and that is just another testament to what an absolutely excellent guy that he is. We are desperate for someone like that in our squad right now, aren't we? But, I don't necessarily resent the decision to sell him. He was obviously on a reasonably high wage. He's, obviously getting on. But fair play to Thiago Silva, and he was just a cult hero, wasn't he? So it's just always good to see him doing well. Right, so the Premier League fixtures have been announced for the next season, and it's quite interesting, actually. The last couple of seasons, I think we've had the openers have been quite difficult for us. I think we had Man City maybe twice in the last few years. So a little bit less egregious this time. Our opening fixture of the Premier League season will be Crystal Palace on the 17th of August. And interestingly enough, that is one of 4 London derbies that we will be playing in our first 4 matches of the Premier League. So that's going to be followed up by Fulham, West Ham and Brentford. So Chelsea aren't going to leave London until September when we go and play Man United away. So you got to think that's probably a good thing, right? Because, obviously not much travelling and stuff. It will keep everyone all in and around the same space. London derbies are obviously always difficult, but it kind of makes every game a bit of an event. Really interesting start to the next season, and I am, kind of excited for this one. Crystal Palace obviously had an amazing season, winning their FA Cup last year, but ultimately, especially with a couple of the signings you would expect us to bring in, it would be unusual for us to lose against Crystal Palace on the opening day, and if we do, that might set the tone for another rocky season. So that's kind of it for the day, guys. I'm not expecting, like I say, because of the Club World Cup, I'm not expecting a huge amount of news to, involving transfers at least, to happen. It's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? Because the full focus kind of needs to be on the team. You got to think, although I am not very sure that we're going to go that deep into the competition, based on the likes of PSG beating Atletico 4-0 and Bayern Munich drubbing Auckland by 10. We're obviously going to give it our best, and transfer news can be unsettling for players, can't it? For instance, if imagine we bought the 2 wingers in the Club World Cup, then Noni's there thinking, well, that's it, I'm out, aren't I? Do you know what I mean? And obviously he's kind of our only option for left wing at the moment outside of Tyreek George. So I would have thought that any big signings are probably going to wait until we are out of the competition. Like I say, I'd be surprised if that was all the way to the end. So, as ever, guys, if you have enjoyed the content, please do me the distinct honour of liking, sharing and subscribing. Hit all of the algorithmical buttons. And if you do like my content and would like to be notified about when it comes back, hit that bell. This has been the Stamford Sync Update. I am Matt, and have a lovely day, guys. Peace.